Hello, welcome to On an Island Vinyl, where we discuss vinyl albums that you could be very happy with being stuck on an island. My name's Adam, and the albums that we're going to discuss today are some that I found in Japan. I recently went there for about 2 weeks, and I've been back for about 3 weeks in the States. One thing about Japan is that they really take care of their products. They really have a more of an honor mindset where if the said artist would come into their own record store and buy an album, they don't want any defects. So the vinyl there is in beautiful shape and it's in a pretty decent price range. And the vinyl I'm going to show you are 7 albums, and it is a mix of jazz and some rock as well. So let's start. The first album I got was on my first full day in Shibuya, Tokyo, and I saw this album at Tower Records. Now, it is the same Tower Records as the one in America, and this building was 7 stories tall, full of music, and on the 6th floor had just an array of music, just all records, used and new. And on this shelf, I saw this album right here. And on the particular label, it is called Musique pour l'Image. I think it's a French label. And this is kind of like a soundtrack, modal jazz type of album, where each song is about 1 to 2 minutes, but within that time frame, you get a good amount of sounds that you can either reuse while you're DJing, mixing, or just casually listening. I find this to be an exceptional album, and come to find out, it's a pretty hard album to find in the States. I spent about $200 USD on this album, and the only one that's selling right now is going for about $600. Now, that doesn't mean it's worth $600. That's just what they're selling it for. Personally, I think it's really good at a $200 level. And unfortunately, not a lot of the music here has been put on the internet. That will change soon once I upload this later on as a playlist for you guys to listen to. As for now, I think there's about 1 or 2 songs that you could listen to. Think of just like a nice modal type of jazz. Nothing like So What, nothing like Kinda Blue. Modal, yes, but electronic modal. Okay, so that's the first album I got. Now, the second one may look a little familiar compared to this first album. It is because it is off the same exact label. Now, you can see on the back here, I kept the Tower Records receipt, and I try to do that for all albums that I buy internationally. Now, I've only been to France and Japan, so it's kind of a new thing for me, but I think it's important to catalog where you got some of these records. Now, my brain works in mysterious ways because a lot of these records I can remember where I got them from, and some I don't. But at least for Japan, I can somewhat remember where I got them from. This one is straight electronic, very like synth heavy, very, not really jazz, but it's just electronic. It's interesting because this label has a wide variety of genres. Whereas the first one I showed you is very jazzy, this one is very electronic heavy. But I do not regret picking this up. The first day, I picked up these two for a combined, I think, $280. And I thought it was a good deal, so I got it. And with Japan comes a lot of impulse buying. So you have a hard time kind of distinguishing what you really want and what you can kind of leave, right? And I'll show you one of those albums in a second where I could have left it, but in the condition that it was in, it was kind of worth picking up, even though it's not the most expensive album. You know, when collecting records, you don't really want to think about how expensive or how cheap something is sometimes just to get it. But you want to think about the music. That's what record collecting is about. It's about the music. Yes, it is nice to have a rare record here and there, but in my personal opinion, I think the music always comes first. Good example of that is this Walter Bishop Jr. Hot House off of the Muse label. Now this album is a very beboppy, somewhat at times just fast, engaging album. There's one or two songs that are kind of mellow, but for Walter Bishop Jr., this is a very, very beboppy album. There's another one off of this Muse label called Soul Village. That one is really hard to find, and I couldn't find it over there. But Randy Brecker and that whole group, I think there's like 5 or 6 people in that. It's very, not elevator music, but it's very fusion-y at times, where everyone's kind of playing like electronic vibes, but it's still jazz, right? And I just prefer this one a little bit more. This one kind of has a more jazzy tone to it. So on here we have Sam Jones on bass, Al Foster on drums, Bill Hardman on trumpet, and Junior Cook on tenor sax. And Walter Bishop Jr., of course, is playing the piano. And what's cool about Japanese pricing is sometimes you'll go to stores and you'll see this type of label, where B is of the highest quality, S is sealed, there's no A. B is of the highest quality of the sleeve and both the record. So when you open this, the record's in mint condition. There are no scratches, there are no flaws. For example, this record had the same label, but they took it off, and it said, I think it was a C for both. And the grading itself was G+. Now, when you're looking at this, you must be thinking, there's no way that they labeled this as a G+. They did. And the record itself looks like a mirror. There are a few tiny hairline scratches, but I chose the latter and picked it up because it's a really awesome album. Another album I found is this Yamamoto Tetsuyoshi Trio, and the album's called Misty. This is a simple 3-piece trio, bass, drums, and piano. Very, very light Bill Evans vibes. I mean, it is not fast at all. This album is just incredible. And funny story about this album and two other albums I'm going to show you is I was in kind of 30 minutes outside of Tokyo, about on the west line on the Chuo line. And in this area, it was very suburban, rural, not too much of a city vibe. And I just decided to stop at this one station just because, you know, you're exploring, right? And I found this little hole-in-the-wall bookstore in this kind of like antique mall type of vibe where there are all these different businesses. But when I walked in, this bookstore had about 3 or 4 crates right outside, and I started digging through. And I just found some incredible albums, man. Stuff that you just, again, could not really find in good condition or really in the United States. And I just got a ton of records from them. One being that record, and another one that most people would recognize is Dark Side of the Moon. Now on the back here it says 2,000 yen, which converting to American dollars is about $13. Now for a first or very early second press Japanese Dark Side album in mint condition goes for around $200. And looking on the Discogs reviews, a lot of people say this press is very good sonically. Compared to the UK first press, it is in a equal comparison. Now, I haven't listened to this yet, but when I do, that will definitely be a review I will be leaving on that Discogs page. Because still, getting a $13 Dark Side album, you got to. You know, it's Dark Side of the Moon. It's Pink Floyd. This was just an incredible album. If you haven't listened to this, if you've been living under a rock for 50 plus years, I would recommend listening to this album. It is very, very good. Now this one kind of has an interesting story to it. Got it from the same bookstore as well as that Dark Side of the Moon. This is Makoto Okai, 38 Hemingway Street. Now the backstory to this individual is that he was a jazz student at Berklee or just an up-and-coming jazz student. And he recorded 5 songs on this album, and this is the only album that they released. Now, he happened to pass away in 1983. He died during the war in Japan. I think he was a fighter pilot, and he got shot down and he passed away. So this album was released posthumously. And this album is very, not weird, but looking at the cover, you would think it's kind of just like a standard jazz album. But this is a very funky-ish, fusion, avant-garde type of free jazz album, where it's kind of like if Bitches Brew had in the pocket sound. There are some weird timbres to this album that aren't really appealing at first, but once you get used to it, it kind of grows on you, right? You can listen to this on YouTube. I do not think it is on Spotify or Apple Music. I will soon to be making a playlist of a lot of these that will be released on this channel. You know, a big goal of mine is to showcase music that isn't cataloged on the internet. I personally think it is important because when this music is lost, it is lost forever until someone rediscovers it. And when I'm able to share that with one person, let alone all of you, I feel like it does the artist justice, right? That's really the end goal of this channel. Not only to have Desert Island playlist and what's an album you can listen to forever and ever, but also to showcase really, really good music. One last album I want to show you. I was walking near a very beautiful botanical garden in Japan. There was this tiny bookstore again, but it was only books. And on the very, very, very top shelf, there are about 5 or 6 records. One of them being like Astro Boy and just a few other ones. But this one really caught my eye. This is like a baseball kids compilation artist. I don't even know what to call it. It is a very interesting album. And it just is very cool to have. Funny thing, so most records, they open up with the cover being here, and you open it up this way, but it's backwards, kind of like a manga book. But when I saw this cover, it was really, really high up, and I asked, like, Sumimasen, which is, excuse me, or can I have this? I was like, Sumimasen, is that for sale? And the guy was like, no, it's not for sale, but you can look at it. So I went on the stool, he tried getting it, but he wasn't tall enough. So he said, you go. And I went up on the top shelf and I grabbed this record, and it was about 3,000 yen. Now, mind you, this was towards the later end of my trip where I did not have a ton of cash left on me. So I was kind of contemplating on leaving it. You know, 3,000 yen is about 20 bucks or so, $18. And I just decided to get it. I mean, you only live once, right? And I was very happy to get it. There are no examples of this online. There are a few examples of similar albums with kind of the same art, but not this specific one. And again, this is one that I will be releasing very soon. And yeah, that's kind of the vinyl haul for today. I just figured I'd showcase some of the albums I got from Japan. I got about 120, 130 records, about 50 of them being 45s, which, if you don't believe me, these are all the ones that I grabbed. There are a ton. A lot of them were about 100 yen, which is less than $1. I think it's about 75 cents. And I just grabbed random ones where the covers looked really cool. Like, tell me that this cover doesn't look cool, man. Look how cool that is. And it says 100 yen right there. But this will be for a later video. As for now, thank you for tuning in to On an Island Vinyl. Please like and subscribe. And have a great day. Peace.